get their payment in PAPs or that currency. They would rather want to get it in the currency that they will use to purchase their raw materials. And I've given typical examples such as Dangote and the car assembling plant that you mentioned. So perhaps we solve it to a point, but until all these raw materials, input materials, are domesticated in Africa, and that will take the industrialization of Africa, steel is not yet available for us. So in Nigeria today, you don't have steel. We still need to import the steel. You will need the dollars to import the steel. Until that is solved, perhaps will not solve the problem.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chika, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I heard, conversations around how, like the creative industry, government was delaying, and so the private sector took it by. I think it's very difficult to extricate government from what we are trying to do. Government has to be very deliberate. And I really like the example he gave about the Dangote project. And, the reason why, we're hoping that it will be successful with government policies. There are other success stories, NLNG and all these ones. There were, very deliberate government policies to drive this. In Nigeria, right, there is an incentive that is available for exporters. It's called the Export Exemption Grant. What does it do? It gives exporters that meet, their different criteria, but it allows them get up to 15% of the value of what they export and repatriate into Nigeria. Why was it introduced? It was introduced because the government saw, look, cost of doing business in Nigeria is effectively a subsidy. That's what it is. Cost of doing business in Nigeria is expensive. Let us, motivate exporters, to be able to get a percentage of, their sales back via grants so that they can reinvest, and all this backward integration, like you referred to, can come on board. They can, rather than importing the steel, build steel plants, rather than, and what does that do? It allows Nigeria take a larger portion of the value chain of the exports, because right now, we're talking about exporting things at their crude level, for the ones that are even participating, right? Or if you're not, exporting things at their crude level, like he said, you're importing raw materials in foreign currency and you're exporting, and, we're expecting to use PAPs to get. So at the end of the day, there needs to be that deliberate government policy to either, look at introducing incentives, or at least removing disincentives, from, the value chain of exports to encourage exporters to backward integrate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry, sir. Go on. Yes, please go on.
Just one thing concerning government and their importance. In management class, we talk about PESTEL, P-E-S-T-E-L. So political, economic, socio-cultural, technology, environmental, and legal framework. That P is what drives all the other ones. So you want to talk about economic, the P drives the unemployment rate, the P drives the economic FS rate, and so on. In socio-cultural, the government policy will determine. Government can tell you don't give birth to more than 2 children. It's still the P. The P drives the legal framework. So the P is the most important in all the other parameters or macro-environmental factors. So I just want to add to all we have been saying since the beginning of the day. Engagements like this need to be held with major stakeholders in government. So you talk about Nasima. I've been part of that team that went to see one of the ministers. At your own organizational level as well, sir, you meet possibly with the Attorney General of the Federation, you meet with relevant stakeholders in the government, and this stakeholder engagement needs to continue so that they continue to understand the import of their policies and how it has effect on the people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dada. And we're rounding up. There was a small research I did just before while I was actually engaging with Mr. Esiri, and I understand that she actually wrote an article in Business Day, incidentally. It's titled Economic Resilience and Wealth, Economic Resilience and Wealth, How Private Firms Can Adapt and Succeed. And there's a quote there where it says, family businesses play a vital role in the global economy, generating approximately 70% of global GDP and employing 60% of the world's workforce. And then she goes on to say that there are 7 key considerations they would advise, say PwC would advise, or she would advise private businesses to consider. And one of them, because that resonates with what we're talking about here, is to take advantage of technological disruptions like Gen AI. So we've already spoken about the operational instruments, that one of which is PAPS. There are others like the African Trade Observatory, ATO, and the Electronic Certificate of Origin, amongst others. From a private business perspective, and I understand how important we have consistently made references to how important government is. But let's drill down, as I think Ms. Wemi had said in the previous session, to that small business. How important, from your own the kind of services you have offered, is technology? How important technology is to their own business? And I'll come to you, Mr. Dada, and the question would be, from your most recent experience as a participant in the GTI process, walk us through some of the hurdles your company had to overcome through technology. I say this because, and this is just to round up, we consistently remind ourselves, has been done severally today, that in the past there were no borders. Our forefathers could just wake up and trek to Kara Namuda, wherever they wanted to go to do business. Today, it's not physically possible, just because we are not our forefathers. I'm sure you wouldn't like to live here and say you want to start walking to Sokoto. There are certain innovations, we call it technology, that makes life relative, or should make life relatively easier and smooth. And I think it also impacts in some way, shape, or form in your business. It could be positive, it could be negative. So starting from you, sir, from a private small business perspective, before we go to Mr. Dada's experience, and then we'll round up, how important has tech been? Because from what your colleague is saying, it is quite key, and she's even advising that she considers them technological disruptions like Gen I should be factored in businesses generally. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so absolutely, the world is changing. Like you said, back in the day, physical, movements of goods. Now you can trade in services, you can trade in intangibles. You don't need to, step your foot. E-commerce, the world has changed, right? So small businesses are encouraged to continue to leverage technology. And this cuts across the different spheres of, activities. And I'll give you an example. As you would have seen, companies like Google, all these other businesses, have a lot of dealings with Nigerian customers. And in the past, bringing this, maybe a bit to tax, these entities, were not tax paying in Nigeria, right? But what has happened now is that they are now required to pay tax in Nigeria, because the world has seen to say, look, we cannot use the old rules to tax businesses currently, right? Because in the past, you needed to have brick and mortar physical presence to say you are operating from that country. But now you can be anywhere and be generating significant revenue from different locations. So technology has clearly disrupted the way we've known things to be done. And so small businesses are encouraged, to move along with it. And I'll just, maybe have our tech expert just add a bit more on technology. But what I would like to say also around integration and travel is, you cannot do trade without travel. And I think it has been said a number of times earlier today. But it was interesting watching, I think it was the Africa CEO Forum where Dangote was saying that as the richest man in Africa, he needed 35 visas to travel around Africa. While a Frenchman, the CEO of Total Energies, did not even need as much as he did, right?
I only need one because I don't go anywhere.
Did not need as much as he did, and it was just it was mind blowing to me that the richest man in Africa will be required to submit bank statements and all those things to get visas. Someone that can, not to denigrate, but buy some countries. But anyway, so I just found that interesting. So I think that from a travel and encouraging movement of people around Africa, those kind of things around travel restrictions should be looked into. I'll maybe know whether he wants to add some additional comments around what small businesses are seeing with technology.
Thank you. Mr. Dada?
Yeah, so I believe this is in closing possibly.
Yes.
So I mentioned e-commerce earlier on, and your ability to get your goods easier through e-commerce and people requesting for your goods. So you need to be visible. So when you are talking about technology, people need to know you. And then you must have a website to enable people to interact with you and be able to request for your goods. So if that is not there, it will be difficult for people to even request for your goods. But looking at our own side and the peculiarity of our goods, when you request cards in the banks, they tell you either want to get it on the spot, so you call that instant issuance, or they tell you to come back the following day or 2 days later. So what happens when they tell you to come back 2 days later is that they send your data to a company like ours, and then we personalize on those cards and we send it. Now, so what banks are doing outside Nigeria as well is that you have a system where they can personalize their cards on the spot. So you go to the banks and you request your card and they personalize it on the spot for you instead of waiting for us to personalize in our company here in Nigeria and send it to them. So it's an arrangement. It's called full instant issuance, whereby companies make your cards available for you on the spot. So with that, there is a particular part of our service. So you have a company that has 3 subsidiaries. So there's a manufacturing part, and then there's the digital part. So that digital part is the one that provides that service where banks can deliver your cards to you on the spot. And then the manufacturing part manufactures the card. So you send those cards. As soon as you manufacture them, you send those cards down to the countries. And then when you go walk into the bank to request for your cards, you get it on the spot. So that's one of the ways the advancement in technology is changing the landscape for a business like ours.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah, I think we're making good time. I'm told I have about 45 minutes, and we're already approaching 40. So I do not know if we have any comments, questions. If we don't, I'd ask for parting shots from the 2 panelists. But a few quick takeaways. The first one, there's no gainsaying the fact that technology is important to African businesses. And I think we'll do ourselves a disservice to think that because maybe we are small, that it's not an important factor. Indeed, as we all found out, even some of the operational instruments of the AFCFTA are technologically driven. So you cannot, for example, if you want to avail yourself of the benefits of the Pan-African Payment Settlement System, for instance, say because you're not used to basic tech, that you don't want to avail yourself of the opportunities that that platform offers. I also see opportunity. We have, Mr. Dada made a point in not necessarily beating down, but make us see the reality of not just being sucked in by tech and its application to PAPs. That if raw materials are not necessarily sourced within the continent, you have no option but to get them where you have to pay at a premium. But that is also an opportunity. So what that means is we have solid minerals scattered all over Nigeria, for example. there are heightened mining activities currently going on in some of the northern states. These are opportunities that I think we should engage our clients on and possibly encourage them to exploit. Because when you source for barite, you source for nickel, you source for lithium, all those raw materials can end up in all the products that companies such as yours makes. So it speaks to the analogy that the example that Olutayo gave of the lady who had been struggling to export goods within the continent, and under the AFCFTA GTI, she was able to export 36,000 worth of her product, which translated to her having to increase her workforce. And what that meant was employing more people, essentially answering the question, Mada, you asked. I'm sure it's a first step towards that 30 million people being lifted out of poverty. It's a gradual process. And I'm totally sold on Mr. Lutayo's position. I think his principal, Mr. Oluwole, also shares the same, that it's not a race. Yes, it's a marathon. It's not a 100 meters dash. There is hope. Our forefathers, if I may call them that, under the old Organization of African Unity, that Kwame Nkrumah and co, that thought of this idea of a single market in the African continent in the 60s and projected towards 2063. They knew that it wasn't something that was going to happen overnight. It would take time. This is 2024. If we're looking at the Agenda 2063, that is what? 39 years, a generation and 9 years. Hopefully we will all be here to see the Africa of our dreams. So, yeah, a question. Yes.
I think I need to ask more questions, but this is a contribution. My name is Eric, and I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed this conversation. It was very productive. What I'd like to add is that's to you, to Aluko, job doing this. I strongly believe that a lot of SMEs in Nigeria would need consistent training, awareness, probably in a bigger scale, but they need this. Because if we look at the future, let's look at 10 years from now, with everything happening, blockchain technology and the way technology is going, I'm sure there will be a time that artificial intelligence will be treated in a way where machines buy things for us. So if you're not able to position yourself well from a technological point of view, it will be difficult for you to even do business in the Africa we are, envisioning. So I would urge that, well done, and please create more forums to have, extensive, discussions, training, awareness, probably on social media, on YouTube with this SMEs. Just to add to what Mr. Dada said, people spend USD to purchase spare parts. If I want to buy a car from Mikano and I need to get my spare part, it's going to be imported, in USD. If the economy of the society is working well enough, I think most OEMs would happily come here and do practical investment in the parts that we need. Interestingly, we have a lot of fabricators here in Nigeria that can fabricate your windscreen, even some of your basic parts, but the enabling environment is not put in place, and so it's difficult to do this. So I feel with what you're doing, more sensitization, more interaction with the government to probably open the eyes of those that make policies, I am sure there will be more opportunity for multinationals and even local investors to actually create systems that will reduce, people paying in USD, rather paying in their local currency. And in the long run, developing what needs to be developed and increase and facilitate Africa growth and trade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eric. Any other comments, questions? Okay.
Mr. Eric, I particularly like the fact about doing this because my boss is behind you, so he can hear that we need to do this again. But thank you, distinguished colleagues, guests, Mr. Dada, Mrs. I'll keep calling you Esiri as you represent the Mr. Chike. Thank you so very much for your time. He had to jump in last minute. We are indeed very grateful for your efforts. Mr. Dada, what can I say? We've had extensive discussions. These conversations, you and I, it will continue. It cannot end. And also thank you for helping us out in session 1, for being around. Please, a warm round of applause for Mr. Dada. Been here since morning with his team. Thank you so very much for your time. I think this brings us, I'll hand over to you, Yoma.
Yes, thank you all for staying till the end of this event. I want to before I do that, quick photo session. Yes, for the final panel. Mr. Modi, sir. Mr. Modi. Yes, I think the planning committee, you can also join. Just Lover. Okay, thank you once again. So I want to give a special shout out to the members of the International Trade Practice at ALN Aluko-Anoyebode for planning this beautiful, insightful, and engaging webinar. And like I mentioned when we started, this is our annual International Trade Symposium. So trust and believe, thank you, sir. Trust and believe that 2025, we are coming back bigger, better. So please look forward to that. Thank you. Veronica. Veronica. Thank you. So just for you to give your feedback, Chibuzo, the final. Yes, just for you to give your feedback, please. We did this at the beginning. Let's just do this at the end. Let us know how you are rating or how you rated today's event. Please don't go yet. Please just rate the event and give us your feedback. Asia, please don't go yet. Just give us your feedback. Yes. Joshua, don't go yet. Debo, please, we want your feedback. You were here from the beginning to the end. So please, we'll really like, oh, okay. Seems like we'll have to take your feedback in person. So please, if you have any comments on how we can improve, what you enjoyed in the session so far, please let us know. You can walk up to me. You can also meet Jesse Loba or Amarachi. Yes, thank you so much. It was amazing having you all with us today. And Till we see next year, have a great day and goodbye. Thank you.